All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. My name is Bernadette Desir, and I'm your host. And joining me today is Christina. How are you?
I am well. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Happy to have you on the podcast to share.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
happy to be
yeah,
here.
yeah. Can you tell us where about are you tuning in from?
Yeah, I'm in my postal address is Linden, Virginia now. I've just moved to the middle of a mountain in the middle of a forest from a city in Colorado. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
new
That's
for
my
me.
dream. That's my dream to move away somewhere more quiet. How is it?
Yes. Oh, well, it's very lovely. The first morning we were here, there was a doe out back that had just given birth, and the baby was still learning how to
Oh,
walk. It was
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gorgeous. If I go out my front door, I can't see any neighbors, and that's lovely.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, so let's get started. Can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Christina Smith. I am a confidence and self-validation coach for midlife women, which means that I give them tools to feel really good about themselves, even in midlife, which I think
Mhm.
women are supposed to go hide away once they hit 45 or
Yeah.
something, and not come back out unless they're grandma or something. And I think that Gen X is definitely changing what that looks like, and I'm really excited
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you always wanted to do what you're doing right now?
No. I was just thinking back, what would 20-year-old me think? Somebody asked me the other day, and I was like, she'd be like, is that a real job? Like, she'd be like, I don't even know if that's a real thing, what you're talking about. So no, she would have been shocked and amazed, because it's so different than how I
Mhm.
was raised. Like, I was a
Yeah.
life coach for 7 years before my mom stopped sending me employment ads.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, what was your childhood like? And were there good memories and what did you learn from them?
Oh, phew. My childhood was up until about the age of 8. I was very alone most of the time. So I was a big reader, and I
Mhm.
became happy to be alone a lot. And then my mother remarried, and there was siblings that came, and I became, the eldest daughter, which is the one who caretakes all the others.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of trauma and abuse, and it was, yeah, dysfunctional to say the least about it anyway. It was very dysfunctional. And I used to wear it as an identity, and I think today I've learned how to transform that into a gift. That I mean, would I go through the trauma again if I didn't have to? Of course not.
Mhm.
And with every trauma, we can get some gifts from it, some
Mhm.
pieces of gold that other people who haven't experienced that don't necessarily have. And I think that
Mhm.
it's making the lemonade out of the lemons, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's the best we can do with it, and it doesn't mean that it justifies it. It just means that
Mhm.
I have really great gifts because of the stuff that I've been through, and I think that
Mhm.
that's what helps in my life coaching is that I've always been wondering how people work. You know what I mean? That's the thing that I've been
Mhm.
interested. Like, how do people, like, why would they do it that way and not the way that
Mhm.
I was taught to do it, and all these other things? And that's what makes me really good at
Mhm.
seeing the patterns and the links to things.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why I help my clients is I can point out things that they're not
Mhm.
seeing.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And trauma is it's such a complex topic. I've talked about it a few times to myself, to lots of other guests. It's still a mystery. I can't put my hands on it to uh disconnect some of the stuff that cause it or why they cause it. What have you learned from your trauma?
Mm. I have learned that being a sensitive person is actually a gift. My mother used to say that like it was a negative thing, like being sensitive meant that I cried too much or I was too emotional, or
Mhm.
but as I've gotten older and done a lot of my own personal growth work, I realized that my sensitivity is what keeps me safe. It's what has me read people so that I know how much I can trust them and where I need to put my boundaries with them.
Mm,
Um, it helps me even physically. I don't eat a lot of sugar because I listen to my body, and my body is very sensitive to sugar. And
mhm,
so I don't overdo it on sweets because I
mhm,
my body just says no. And so that prevents me from a lot more illness. When I was ignoring my body, I didn't have that. So really starting to embrace some of the things that other people think are not gifts and then saying, well, actually, that is a gift,
mhm. Yeah.
being so sensitive. So that's probably the thing that I've been thinking about lately.
Mhm,
Um, yeah, the
mm,
sensitivity is my gift.
mhm.
And yeah, it's
Yeah.
lovely to have
Yeah.
that. And in the same way, I guess, for a long time, I used being passive aggressive and sarcastic as being funny, but it was really like building a wall around me because of my trauma.
Mm,
When I was young, I didn't have another way of making people not want to hurt me other than just being a really big old bitch, right? And so I
yeah.
would I would use that energy to keep
Mm.
people away from me. And then by my 20s and 30s, I was like, oh, why don't I have any friends? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's this big bitch energy that I have out there. And so maybe I need to shift that. However, that is still a gift. It's just one that I was using too much. Because let's face it, if somebody's like carjacking me or putting me in some kind of unsafe situation, that energy is great to pull out and keep myself
Yeah.
safe.
Mhm,
Still, it's just that I was using it. I was like using a sword for all the utensils in the kitchen instead of like a
mm.
spoon and a fork and everything just needed a sword.
Yeah.
So I learned how to shift that energy.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but it took a lot of work to actually look all of these things in the face and really ask, is this how I want to show up?
mhm, mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing. When you say sensitive, can you describe a little bit what you mean by that?
That I do feel emotions a lot, that when I have physical pain and physical discomfort, I am
Mm,
completely distracted by it.
mm,
But for me, it's like for a long time I ignored my feelings. So, because I was told that that was a negative thing, like, oh, that's not nothing to be sad about, that's nothing to be
yeah.
mad about. And so I started invalidating myself and going, ah, I must be making this up. I must be wrong. There's something wrong with me.
Mhm,
And then I wouldn't listen, where in my 20s, my body was giving me these migraines, trying to give me a message. And I was like, oh, messages, I'll
mhm,
just take a pill and it'll go away. Right.
mm,
And then it was like, oh, you're not listening. So we'll inflame all of your joints. And so what did I do? I took a pill and it went away. I didn't actually listen to like what's
mm,
going on in my body that is causing this. It was
mm,
just get rid of the symptoms.
mhm,
And then I had gut problems so badly that I would be in the hospital for a few days and then I'd be in bed for like weeks. And
mm,
it happened several times a year. And I was like, something is wrong. And that's when I started listening to my body. Now, had I listened, I could have avoided all of that by listening to the first migraines and been like,
mm,
what's going on here that is causing the migraines? And it was a lot of it was what I was eating and putting in my body, but a lot of it was just how hard I was pushing myself to be
mm,
productive, go to school, work two jobs, do all of the things.
mhm.
And my body really didn't like it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it's most of us, unfortunately, it's the hustle life to get by,
Mm,
um, fitting in a box to be seen as what we're not. And it's a constant struggle. And
mhm,
unfortunately, so many of us have those symptoms. We ignore them until it becomes an issue.
mm, mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. What would you say sets you apart from other life coaches?
I am a really kind of science-based life coach, and I have nothing against life coaches who depend on like energy healing or anything like that. But me
Mhm.
specifically, I like to use tools that I know have been tested psychologically. I'm kind of like a late adopter.
Mm,
And with that being said, I try to make the tools as simple as possible. So I think
mhm,
what sets me aside is that most of my women come together in really small groups and they get really
mm,
connected with each other. And then through that, they they gain confidence because they're with women who are cheering them on all the time.
yeah.
And so, one of my gifts is bringing women together and having really vulnerable,
Mhm.
important conversations that I don't think that we have enough outside of those sacred
Yeah.
circles.
Yeah, 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 I agree. When you say midlife,
Mhm.
what is the age range? Because I think
That's a
I'm
good
slipping into
question.
that soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I used to say it was like 35 to 60, but I also have women that are in their late 20s and I have women that are in their mid 60s. So it really depends on where you think you are.
Mhm,
I had a midlife crisis at 35. Some people don't have them until they're 50 or 55.
mhm,
So I think it's whenever that space in you is calling for something more, that you're like, okay, I've done
mhm,
this. I'm in this comfort zone. I want to get out of this comfort zone.
mhm,
What is keeping me with my old habits rather than moving forward towards what I want and actually thriving? Like, when do I
mhm,
get past the surviving spot? Because most of us are past the surviving. We just haven't stepped into thriving yet. And I'd love
yeah,
to help women with that.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, yeah, I think I'll be going through mine for a while. Yep, yep, and it can be a very hard place to be in.
Mm.
What are
It's also
some?
one of the most beautiful. I mean, it
Yeah.
is the most beautiful too, because I think when we look back on our journeys, we're like, that's the moment where I had all the space to do the dreaming and the
Yes.
imagineering and the looking at all the possibilities before I really solidly went down one path.
Mhm,
So I think it's how we look at it rather than I'm lost. It's like I'm open. I'm open
mm,
to anything right now. And so
mhm,
what is actually calling for me?
yeah.
And I would, if I could take 2 minutes just to give you like a
Yeah,
quick
go
little
ahead.
exercise that you can try. Most of us have tried like a vision board or something like that before, right? Like we come up, what is the dream that we want? And we have these pictures either in our mind or on a board.
Mhm,
And the key to that is we want all of those things because there's a certain feeling that we associate with that. That's how humans work. We
mm,
say, when I have that house or when I have that vacation or this happy family, I am going to feel fill in the blank.
mm,
That is what we actually want.
mhm,
And the generic word would be you're happy, whatever your happy is, right? But
mhm,
for me this year, it's love, open, and bold.
mm,
So I want things to feel like love. I want them to feel open and I want them to feel bold. And
mhm,
if that's true, that now gives me a specific path to go on, at least. Like my purpose, my next purpose is going to be within love, bold, and open.
yeah.
I know that. So
Mhm.
I can let go of all the other things, which like I'm not jumping out of planes because that does not feel like love, bold, and open to me. A little too bold, maybe. Right? Like,
Yeah.
so there's things that I can cut out because if they don't feel that way, they're not aligned with what I actually want. And
Mm,
so when I can really focus myself there, then it's
mhm,
fantastic. And that at least gives me a path to follow down and then look
mm,
at opportunities that feel that way.
mhm. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Mm.
When does someone know they're having a midlife crisis?
Mm.
What are some symptoms,
Yeah.
behaviors, that shows?
Mhm.
When do you know?
Yeah, well, one thing that a lot of my clients they get bored with their life and they're like, I'm bored and I don't want to do anything different because it feels hard.
Mm,
So it's kind of both and it's so interesting.
mhm,
And they're often maybe they have these big transitions, like their kids, they're becoming empty nesters, so their kids
Mm,
are moving off. So there's this big transition. All of a sudden, there's this big gaping hole of like, what do I do with this time or this energy? Which is
mm,
usually not something we're thinking about in our 20s and 30s because we're usually
yeah,
so busy.
yeah,
But by this time for some people, and it could be 30s for some people,
mhm,
what do I do with that space now? Or I've gotten my job and yeah, like for me, I had a great corporate job. It was really beautiful. I worked for a beautiful company, and yet I
mm,
cried on the way to work every day for a year.
mm.
Yeah, when you're crying on the way to work for a year, that might be a clue
Yeah.
that you're having a crisis. But I'd
Mhm,
also like to say that it doesn't have to be a crisis. I like to look at it as if it's like it's a calling. It's
yeah.
calling you
Mhm,
to look a little deeper within. It's calling you to look at new opportunities or possibilities. And
mhm,
it's when we want to ignore that and stay in our comfort zone
mhm,
that we suddenly call it a crisis. Because why? Because it's not showing up the way that I want it to. I wanted life to be simple, and I was just going to sit in a rocking chair and enjoy the rest of life, whatever that looks like.
yeah.
And now my something in me is saying, oh no, there's more in you.
Mhm,
We need to get passionate about something, but we get upset because we're not, it doesn't just like pop in front of our face and we go, oh, that's what I'm passionate about. Like we have to actually go out and explore things and try
mhm,
things. And that's part of the crisis, is that we're not doing that. We're so stuck in this comfort zone that we
yeah.
don't really want to break out, but there's
Mm.
part of us that really wants to break out.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Would you say it's also not getting what we want when we thought we would get it? An
Yeah, I mean,
example, a relationship, a job, a career, and just not finding fulfillment or purpose with what we do.
absolutely. I mean, suffering is 100%. The world isn't showing up the way I had expected it to, right? I had
Yep. Mhm,
expectations and they're not being fulfilled. And
mm,
yes, of course, that's going to be crushing, but it can be crushing even when they are fulfilled. Like, how many times
mm,
have you hit a goal and then you're like, now what?
mhm,
Now what? I thought I was just gonna somehow be happy and stay happy,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And now what? That I'm done with this big goal. That definitely can happen to me too. Absolutely. I mean,
mhm.
I think part of the reason that we're so depressed in this society is that things are sometimes a little too easy to get. We're almost too comfortable, that we forget that discomfort and being uncomfortable. Like, even though I want things to always feel like love, open, and bold,
Yeah.
they don't always feel that way.
Mm,
Sometimes to do the things that are going to help me feel bold means that, ooh, I have to go through a lot of discomfort and anxiety in order to get there.
mhm, mhm.
But
Yeah.
part of understanding that is that's the human journey. It's not if it were happy every day, what would actually be happy? Nothing. You'd have
Mm,
nothing to contrast it with. So the working through the hard stuff is part of also the joy, right? It may not feel like joy when you're going through it,
mm,
but once you do it, then you look back and you go, oh, I'm proud of myself. I really got through that thing. I really learned how to manage that thing
mhm.
and manage my anxiety and take the risk and be scared and do it anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that we forget that discomfort is a big part of the journey. And so being uncomfortable isn't a bad thing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about external validations.
Mm. Yeah, we love that, especially in a social media society, don't we?
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's even worse in a social media society because, as we can see from every post on Facebook, is
Mm.
you can't please everybody. You could say something and some people are going to be 1,000% behind you, and then there's going to be
Yeah.
other people who are going to tear down everything you have to say.
Mhm.
And so external validation, isn't it exhausting? Like, you're
Oh, it
constantly trying
is.
to please all of these people and
Mhm.
anticipate what it is that you need to do in order to please all of those people. And
Mhm.
that's a lot of dang energy.
Yeah.
When really, if we just focused on how do I please myself and
Mm.
learn to ask for what I need
Yeah.
and expect that other people are going to ask me. Because I think that the best love language that they don't talk about is being able to ask for exactly what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Because what a gift that is to the other person.
Yeah.
Because then I don't have to sit here and guess.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make you happy. And if you could tell me exactly how to do it, I would love that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than me sitting here and trying to figure out what does she expect me to do for her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so external validation is where we started, but I just wanted to mention that because I think that we miss out on that so much is asking for what we want. But external validation leads us to perfectionism, the fear of being judged, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
really what perfectionism is about. And people pleasing, making sure that everybody around me is happy because then I could be happy. But
Yeah.
that's not really true. There's plenty of moms who make their entire families happy and then they are miserable themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think that's where I was in my midlife crisis.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's exhausting, is what I think about external validation. And
Mm-hmm.
self validation is so much easier. We just
Mm-hmm.
talked about my bold, open, and love, my intentions, right? That's the path. That's what I really want.
Yeah.
Well, if I want that, they say you have to show up that way, right? So every day I have to find ways to show up bold, open, and love. And if I do that, and I look back, even if my expectations of the world weren't met, that relationship didn't work out, I didn't get the promotion, whatever, I can look back and say, well, did I show up with boldness, openness, and love? Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
did. Okay, great. Then I feel good about how I showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Because just because I want something doesn't mean that that's how it's going to turn out. But in the past, what would happen is I would work on a big project. One little thing would be different or wrong. And then I would be like, oh, it's a failure.
Mm.
Instead of saying, I can't control everything, I can only control how I show up. So if
Yeah.
I show up with boldness, openness, and love, then that's all I can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I think very young, we are programmed by our environments, our parents, could be culture, religion, whatever it may be.
Mm.
Whatever surrounds us, that's what we become, whether we choose to or not, most of the time. And you're right, it is exhausting. That's why I don't give a hoot anymore. I
It is.
really don't care. I mean, when I say I care and don't care, people are like, you don't care. Yeah, I care, I care to love people, to accept them where they are.
Care how you feel about how
Yeah.
you show up, which
Mhm.
is more important. Like, do I feel like I showed up like the best Bernadette or the best Christina? Then
Mhm.
as long as I feel like I did
Yeah.
a good job, I don't need to worry about what other people think because they're going to interpret things however they want to interpret them.
Yeah, and it's the constant judgment, not
Mm.
only by society, our culture, but family, friends, communities. You can never do anything right. There's
Yeah, and
always
not by all of
something
them.
wrong.
Not by all of them, right? And that's the thing about perfectionism is it's a moving target. Like every time let's say I crochet. So let's say every time I crochet, I think I've gotten it perfect. But each time I can look at it and go, oh, that could be a little better, or that could be a little better, or that could be a little better. And then I do that. And then I'm like, oh, I think it's perfect. And then I'm like, ah, but look at that thread. That could have been it's
Mhm.
always a moving target, no matter how perfect it is. It's like always something, right, that we could mess up. It's
Yeah,
exhausting. It's
it is.
exhausting. And so not everything needs 110%.
Mhm.
Like if my dish is 70%, I don't like washing dishes,
Yeah,
like we get to
yeah.
choose that stuff. So
Mhm.
perfectionism is just, it's a fear of being judged, is what it
Mhm.
is. We're trying
Mhm.
to be so perfect and you never can be. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I think those of us who are doing anything publicly, we get hit pretty hard.
mhm.
By people we know, by people we don't know. And that's why so many people hide their gifts. They hide themselves and they just walk around zombify with a mask,
Mm.
hoping that someone will say, hey, can you take it off so I can see the real you? But not many people will.
No, no. And, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to show people who you are, especially in a world today where Anybody
Mm.
has access to give you comments or feedback about it, whether you ask for it or not.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, so it just, yeah, knowing what's important to you and being able to self-validate and go, yeah, I showed up with love and openness and boldness. That's what's important to me. Great.
Mhm,
Then I succeeded today, right? I don't
mhm.
need to worry about how everybody else showed up or whether or not acts of God came in and destroyed my plans.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. How can we learn to manage our thoughts and emotions while we're showing up for ourselves?
Hmm. I think the first thing that my inner wise woman is telling me now is slow down. I
Mm,
think we go way too fast. We're overstimulated. And so we're used to just reacting in the moment. And I think
mm,
slowing down to actually hear them,
mm.
because we can have these like negative message tapes that are just playing and playing and playing.
Yeah.
And we don't even recognize that they're playing anymore because we're so used to hearing them. It's just like background noise. And it could be
Mhm,
like really mean stuff like, ah, you never do anything right. Why do you always get all this wrong? Why is this so hard for you? Blah, 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 blah. And we don't even hear them anymore because we're not going slow enough to listen to them. And
mhm,
the other piece is very feminine too. It's like listening to our feelings. Our feelings actually do mean something. I'm not saying that they have to direct you. If I'm angry, I don't have to scream and yell. If I'm
mm.
sad, but if I'm conscious of them, I at least know, oh, Christina, you are in a really cranky mood right now. You need to slow down because things are going to take you longer. Things aren't going to go your way and you're going to get
Mm,
even madder, right? Like, so for me, it's about being really conscious about what's going on in my inner atmosphere
mhm,
so
mhm,
that I can better prepare how I'm showing up in the world because I may not be able to just change the fact that I'm angry, but I can slow down so that I'm not reacting to other people with that anger. And
yeah.
I can be like, okay, we're just going to take some breaths. This is going to be
Mhm,
hard and we're just going to get through this.
mhm,
That way, I'm going to show up more the way that I want to. I can bring in more boldness, openness, and love
mhm.
if I'm slowing down and being more conscious of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna like blow up like a teapot as soon as one person says something that I judge to be
Mhm.
negative or something. I'm gonna be like, "Ah!" So
Yeah.
slowing down and listening, tuning in.
Mhm. It's hard to slow down, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, it has to become a habit, is what I have
Mhm,
found for me, is it's about
mhm.
making it a habit. It started with Christina, just take 3 minutes in the morning because I'm a busy person. I don't have much time to do the 15-minute thing every day, right? So it started with like 3 minutes, but it's expanded. Now I journal. Now I do some reading sometimes and really slow
Mhm,
down. Um, and there's still times where it's really busy, but can I take 3 minutes and breathe into those intentional words? Can
mhm,
I slow down for a minute and just do a body scan and figure out what's going on for me right now? So
mhm,
that, if I'm feeling jealous or something, that doesn't have to come out. I can witness it first and be like, oh
mhm.
yeah, I see that there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Wow, we really like the way that she shows up. That's why we're jealous, right? Like, I mean,
Mhm,
and I can have that conversation so that I don't react from it in a way that I'm not going to feel good about.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah. And, I know when people start to come out, um, it's tough. They deal with so much emotion, what ifs, and how they gonna do it.
Hmm.
How can people process what they want to peel off?
Mm,
It's like a rebirth. We don't wanna be the same person.
it is.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is. Yeah. And, gently, I
Mhm,
think, is the way to do it. Like, and
mm,
not expecting that I like how you say that it's like many rebirths is really what it is, though. Like, we
mhm,
want it to be like, I used to do this for New Year's, right? Like
Yeah.
on New Year's Day, I'm suddenly going to drink all my water, exercise, and go running every day and eat
Yeah.
all the whole foods, no sugars. Like
Mhm.
tomorrow, I'm going to wake up as a whole new person, even though none of those have been regular things for me
Yeah.
before, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so we act like that's how it works, and it doesn't. So what I want people to understand is it works in small bits.
Yeah.
Sometimes just because we know better, we don't always do better. We
Mhm.
see where we can change, but like
Mhm.
I already ate that cupcake because I was having an emotional day and I wasn't conscious of it. And what did I do? I just grabbed that cupcake and threw it
Yeah.
in my face, right? So, but the closer we can get to understanding, oh, actually, I'm just about to grab that cupcake. Do I want to do that? Right? So it's in little tiny shifts that we do that. And I think that that's what discourages people, that they're hoping to see this giant change. But what
Mhm.
I would say is celebrate every step towards the right direction. So
Mhm.
even celebrate noticing, oh my God, I had that cupcake and I didn't even think about it. Yeah, you still ate the cupcake, but at least you're becoming more and more conscious of it,
Mhm.
right? And you're becoming more conscious over, why did I grab that cupcake right there without even thinking about it? And
Mhm.
how can I change that in the future? Those are all little steps that are very important to losing your weight or getting your energy back or becoming more healthy or whatever
Mhm.
your goal is.
Mhm.
And we want to celebrate all those little steps, not just the I lost 100 pounds. We want to celebrate every pound in between and every time you made a good choice for
Mhm.
yourself. All
Mhm.
of that deserves to be celebrated. And the more that we celebrate it, the more that we think, oh, I'm actually capable of this. I actually can do this. And we
Mhm.
stay on the right path. The problem is we do the opposite and punish ourselves when we haven't been perfect. And that's like
Mhm.
a standard that's too high to put for ourselves.
Yeah, 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 I agree. How much of what we go through as adults, especially, during midlife crisis and everything we talked about, how much of that do you think is tied to our childhood?
Oof. I mean, I would think a lot of it because there's so much tied to our childhood that we don't even recognize. Like I know when we're teenagers and young adults, we're like, oh, when I have kids, I'm not going to do X, Y, or Z because that's what my parents did and I didn't like it. Well,
Mhm.
I didn't do X, Y, and Z with my son, but as he was raised, I was like, oh my God, I just showed up like my mom. Oh my God, I just showed up like
Yeah.
my mom. And things that
Mhm.
I didn't even recognize,
Mhm.
that were qualities of my mom. They were just natural, that's how she shows up. But the more you get to know other people, you're like, oh, actually, not everybody shows up that way. Not everybody has those specific characteristics or
Mhm.
whatever behaviors. And so I think you know, and it's like it both impacts you whether you're doing the opposite because of it
Mhm.
or you actually are following the same steps because of it.
Mhm.
It's both the same, like they're both reactions to your childhood. So
Mhm.
I think a lot of it has to do with your childhood and being good at going back and dissecting it. Like, what did I learn about my mom, about being a woman? What did I learn from her about working, about how I want to treat my children, how I want to have friends, how I want to be a wife? Like
Mhm.
we learn things even if we think we haven't learned them.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I agree. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when people are part of your community, let's say they're new to it, what is the process and how do you welcome them?
Oh, like when they come into like my mentorship and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. Well, in my community, we talk a lot about feminine archetypes because I only work
Mhm.
with women.
Mhm.
And so we talk about feminine archetypes. So every month there is an archetype for them to learn deeper
Mhm.
about themselves.
Mhm.
We are all of the archetypes, not just one of them.
Yeah.
Some people do quizzes that are like, which archetype are you? You're all of
Yeah.
them, whether or not you
Yeah.
you recognize it or not. And I work with 12 archetypes. So each month of the year we have a different archetype and they have different skills. Like this month
Mhm.
we're talking about the crone. So
Mhm.
we we have some tools already in the portal that they can do, like visualizations and exercises and rituals around the crone.
Mm.
And then tonight we're going to have once a month we have a open circle and we do a little sharing, a little
Mhm.
visualization around the archetype of the month and the skill of the month. I think
Mm.
tonight we're going to do one around black and white thinking and expanding that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then we have some coaching sessions, and that's the mentorship. I have a full
Mm.
coaching program as well. So
Mhm.
that would meet a little bit more regularly, and you would have a small group of women up to four that
Mhm.
these women get really connected and become really good friends. I have some in one group that they are visiting from across the country to
Oh,
visit
wow.
another
Yeah.
person. Yeah, so it's really cool how the groups connect.
Mhm.
And I think it's just helpful because in midlife, we tend to look back and go, where'd all my friends go while I was busy raising kids and working and
Yeah.
doing all the things? And this is
Mhm.
the time where women are really wanting to be in more connection with other women.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah. It sucks and it's so hard to make friends as adults. I actually picked a book at the library a few days ago.
How to make friends or something, yeah.
Yeah, like what am I doing wrong? I'm kind, I smile, I help, I love. Like, is it me? Is it them?
Yeah,
I'm like, okay. It's hard.
it's it can get tough as an adult. I mean,
Yeah.
when you had kids or like at least when we have like little kids, at least you have to be around other mommies and stuff. But once you get out of school or your kids are out of school, it can be really challenging to really connect with women on a deeper level because there's lots of women who go
Mhm.
to meetups and what, but they're like, how do I go from it's like, you know, what it used to be a little a high school boy who was like, how do I go from saying hi to a girl to asking her out? Well, women feel the same way. Like, how do I go to exchanging numbers with another woman and
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
that outside of the activity that we already do? And
Mhm.
there's ways, but we have to have courage and we have to understand that
Yeah.
not all women are also going to want that as well. But there are
Mhm.
enough women, I believe, out there that do want something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So is your groups, how do you meet? Is it virtual or in person?
Yeah, it's all virtual. That's
Oh,
what gives
okay.
me the ability to move from one side of the country to the other whenever I want to.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all virtual, so it's pretty cool to see women from all over the country get together at one
Mhm.
time a week for 3 weeks a month
Yeah.
and really connect with each other. And
Mhm.
yeah, and be able to share. I was always afraid, like when the pandemic came, like, will Zoom be the same as having these in-person groups that I used to have? And I think if you make the space safe enough and vulnerable enough, that
Yeah.
women can really have some deep work, and it's almost kind of easier that they're in their own home too, so they feel like
Mhm.
safe, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think when we empower each other, we can do so much. But I do know there are women who does the opposite, which is
Oh
very
yeah.
sad to see.
It's a natural instinct of ours, actually. There's a book called Tripping the Prom Queen. It's
Mm,
biologically in us that that females actually are more competitive than males when it comes
mhm,
to biology, because
mhm,
men can go spread their seed wherever, and we have to be one of those
mm,
seed receivers, you know,
mhm,
in procreation. And
mhm.
so it's really built into our DNA to be competitive. Although I like to believe that we're becoming a little bit more civilized and able to support each other.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, there is no competition. You know what
Right.
I
Can't
mean?
we all be beautiful? Can't we all have a crown?
Yeah, because we all going through our own stuff, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Relationships. How does that impact our relationship? Midlife crisis. How does it impact it?
Hmm. I think it's when we we need a lot more support, or a lot more support would be helpful.
Mhm,
And those of us like Gen Xers, we're really used, and trauma survivors, we're really used to doing things independently and doing them
mhm,
on our own. And so it can be hard to ask for help or support. So if it's hard for you to ask for friends or family for help or support, I
mhm,
highly encourage people like that to find a therapist at least and really work through it, because
mhm,
it's so much harder to do it alone. I mean, you can also find women's circles or men's circles, whatever
mhm,
makes
mhm.
sense for you, but finding support somewhere, I think, is the essential part. That's why support group, they have so many different support groups for different things,
Yeah,
because
they do.
they really do work,
Mhm,
to know other people are going through something hard just like you.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. What does femininity mean to you? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, it means allowing and receiving,
Mhm,
and allowing to just receive, where in my life, I've been very masculine, like push, push, and
mhm,
shove, which is like, it's a more aggressive kind of masculine energy.
mhm,
And feminine has always been, when I was growing up, was like Barbies. Like, but in my household, it was like being pretty wasn't as important as being smart and being able to support yourself and be independent.
mm,
And so for me, I fell into a lot more masculine energy of producing and working hard, and
mhm,
creating the career that I wanted and all those other things. And
mhm,
as I'm aging, femininity is more important to me, because it's more balance there. It's allowing and receiving. And I don't know about you, but there's been times in my life where I pushed so hard, where if I had just been patient, it would have been so much easier. Like, I could have gotten the same thing done if I
mhm,
just wasn't so impatient.
mhm,
And instead of being patient, I just kind of shoved things and made them kind of push through. And
mhm,
that took so much more energy and probably didn't come out nearly as well as if I would have
mhm,
just allowed them to develop. And so
mhm.
really allowing and trusting is what femininity for me is about.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think I live mostly in the feminine side.
Mm,
Um, I resonate with it. You know, for people who's never heard of feminine energy, masculine energy, I had to learn what that was. I had no clue
mm,
years ago, right?
mm,
Because I'm like, what? You're a woman, but why are you talking about masculine energy, right? I had to learn what that was, and I
yeah.
like that you give examples because not everybody's gonna know what that means, even though they know what the words mean. They've heard of them.
Hmm.
Yeah, so thank you
And
for
both are
explaining.
necessary. I'm not knocking one or the other. They're
They
both
are, yeah.
necessary. Yeah, I use them both, right? There's times where I need to get stuff done and push through to get it done. And then
Hmm.
there's other times I can be patient and allow things to happen.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Mm,
So what would you like for me and listener, the podcast, I can't talk today.
mm,
What would you like for me and my listeners to get from this episode?
mm. I think if I have any tagline, it's in my email that I'm always saying, be gentle to your humanness, because I think what I'd like them to know is that humaning is hard. It's
Yeah,
hard. It's
it
not
is.
like a computer program that can run us. We have emotions, we have
Mhm,
instincts and inner wisdom and all these things that aren't just logic-based programming, right? And so
mhm, mhm,
understanding that we all make mistakes, we all have all the range of emotions, and life is hard for all of us. So if we can just be
mhm.
kind to ourselves, because humaning is hard.
It is. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So I have
okay.
two questions for you as we wrap up.
Okay.
I'm struggling. It's okay.
It's okay. It happens.
First question. What is the meaning of life for you?
Oh, just a minor question, huh? What's the meaning of life? I think it's just to be. It's like a part of me that wants to answer, like, it's just so we can get so wrapped up in the world that just to calm down and
Mm,
reconnect with our own nature,
yeah.
I think is so important. And I think so. I guess the meaning of life would be to come back to that constantly of being like, I see all the facades of things that are happening around me, but
Mhm.
again, who am I and how am I as a being reacting in this world right now?
Mm, I love that. Yeah, thank you
Mm.
for sharing. Last question, where can people find you, work with you, and support the work that you're doing?
Awesome. Yeah. You can find me on my website, christina-smith.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook under Christina Smith XOXO.
Mhm.
And I also have a podcast that will be coming back out. The third season will start in the fall of 2024. So
Oh, wow.
you can find that at invitingshift.com. So,
Mhm.
yeah, those are all the places you can find me. And there, I have
Oh,
a great toolkit out there for people who want to experience more confidence. So, it's the
mhm.
confidence toolkit. It says midlife, but it will help anybody. I truly believe there's some
Yeah.
real tools in there for you to
Mhm.
lean into your strengths and get really clear on what it is that you
Mhm.
want and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. You have a podcast too. That's
Mm.
really cool. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Christina, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being in the storm with many, many women. Because it's
Thank
tough.
you.
It's tough. It's hard to be
Mhm.
human.
It is hard to be human. Thanks for having me so I could
You're
share that
welcome.
message.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.